Hello, Honors 192. So, I'm Jason Choi. I'll be talking about Lincoln and colonization. So, for this topic, I had to go over four historians and write about their views on Lincoln and colonization. So, I would say the big thing that I got after reading the four articles was that this topic is very controversial and very debatable because it's hard to say what views are right, and it's just very debatable. And then I also learned that all the historians' views were always different. So this was an important subject to understand Lincoln's leadership because it showed how much Lincoln kept to himself and how even to this day we don't know all the stuff that we want to know even after how many years and how many people have investigated in this kind of stuff. And it's also important because he wanted to help the nation come back together after the Civil War. He wanted to be able to bring back the Union in the South. That was the main thing. And then it also showed his hedgehog-like leadership skills because he had, at least with some of the historians, he talks about how Lincoln didn't always plan on doing colonization, but he did it to hide some of his other views, and it really showed how Lincoln was able to plan throughout that. And another thing was he always wanted to think about the best option between white folks and African American folks. So after that, so the first historian that I looked at was Michael Vorenberg, and he wrote Abraham Lincoln and the Politics of Black Colonization. So my thoughts on his stance was that that Vorenberg believed that Lincoln issued colonization as a way to please the people and to get their support for his politics and his later on views. So an example is in the Douglas debate, Lincoln was accused that the new Republican Party was favoring black equality, and this was something that popped up, and Lincoln immediately deflected this accusation, bringing up colonization and how he wanted to split up the two. We can also really see Vorenberg's stance on this topic when he quoted this: Lincoln wanted the audience to believe that his advocacy of colonization was more than just a whimsical hope, that it was in fact a genuine party policy. So key emphasis on believe. He tried to get the people to believe that it wasn't just something he was talking about. However, he wanted to try to get the people to believe that it was actually something that was going to happen. And by him saying this, it shows that Lincoln never really thought that it was a realistic plan, and it was just sort of to cover up and help after he came up with Emancipation. So Vorenberg, he also talks about how Lincoln's decision to forward the Cherokee plan was purely political. Now, this was because he forwarded it to prove it after or right before the Emancipation, and Vorenberg thought that this was purely political because he knew that there wasn't good stuff coming out of this plan. They always said that the land wasn't good, they weren't going to be able to thrive and stuff, but he still forwarded it, and Vorenberg took this as that Lincoln did this to show the public that he had done something for the colonization movement when he gave out the Emancipation Proclamation. So that was the first one. The next was Philip Shaw Paludin, I think, and he wrote Lincoln and Colonization, Policy or Propaganda. So I thought that his stance was that Lincoln did this to allow whites and blacks freedom from each other. So he wanted the separation between the two. And so, as you can see in the title, it's policy or propaganda. So Paludin wrote that propaganda was that Lincoln didn't really support colonization. However, he used it to take pressure off his goals and policy. That meaning that he didn't really want colonization, but he just did it to take off what he was actually trying to do. And then policy was that Lincoln advocated colonization and he actually believed in it. So that was the two sides of it. And then Paludin says that the main problem was slavery and the plan was to compensate emancipation with colonization. So that was the initial plan. And then Paludin talks about how if the states were to reintroduce slavery, then they would have to pay for that happening. So this kind of really shows how his stance was that they wanted the initial and they wanted to split up and they actually wanted to keep it, or they would have to do something, which was to pay. So that was Paludin's stance. And then third was titled Benjamin Butler's Colonization Testimony Reevaluated. Now, his stance was that Lincoln never gave up on the idea of colonization. Now, his evidence on backing this up was how he gave specific examples on Lincoln meeting Butler in 1865, just 3 days before his assassination, which he claims that they talked about colonization. Also, Lincoln never gave up on colonization because Magnus talks about how Lincoln he heard about all the racial violence between whites and blacks, especially in New York. There was a lot of killings or murders, and that's one of the reasons why he kept colonization in his mind and something that he could do. However, at least for Butler's stance, it was very controversial because in his autobiography and stuff, they tracked it back and the dates did not match up. Now, Magnus, he says that Butler had bad memory, but that's something we don't know. But Magnus was trying to explain why the meeting actually happened in this article, and he does this by mentioning how there are records in the White House about him actually being there, and then how Lincoln sent a letter telling him to meet at this time, at this day, and then simply his autobiography about his talk and meeting with Lincoln just 3 days before the assassination. Now, did he make up these claims? Possibly, but thinking that he made an autobiography about it, you'd think that he wouldn't make up such a big thing. So, lastly was an historian named Alan C. Guelzo, and his article was simply titled Review. And this was an interesting one because I guess the first three, they weren't really negative in any way, but Guelzo made it pretty clear that Lincoln, he was bad. Now, his stance was that Lincoln always had colonization as a thought, and the part where he thought he was bad was that any man that is trying to, emigrate people out of where they live is considered bad. And he quotes, "In my mind, there's no such thing as a good colonizationist." Now, that really shows that he doesn't like this. And he also talks about how Lincoln, how good of a man people thought he was, in his thought at least. He says that it's sad to see a man that was so possessed by creating equality between races, so blacks and whites, how he was still considering colonization as an option. Now, yes, people, or at least Guelzo, he didn't think that he did this for a reason to help the people. At least that was the feelings that I got. But many of the other historians said, especially, hold on one sec. Warrenberg, he really thought that he did this for a reason. Now, so going into I agreed the most, that would be Warrenberg. Now, he wrote Abraham Lincoln and the Politics of Black Colonialism. And I guess I agreed with him the most because after reading this and stuff, I guess I didn't agree with Guelzo and that he did it, or he's a bad man, and I don't know, I didn't really think that he thought about it up until the day he died. But there are the three other ones talked about how he did, but at least in Wallenberg, one of the big things was Lincoln. I'm pretty sure initially he got 500,000 of funding to pursue colonization, but the first couple years, yes, he used it, but coming down to it, he only used something like 36,000. Now that is not a lot compared to what he got. He got 500,000, used 36,000. So I thought that Wallenberg was the person I agreed the most with his stance. His stance was that Lincoln did this to please the people and I guess help his politics out. So he did this as sort of a cover-up because he had something to say, or he had something to show for that he tried to pursue colonization during the time that he gave out his Emancipation Proclamation. Now, as for my views on Lincoln, this one was a little interesting because as I really didn't believe Guelzo. I guess not believe. I wasn't really persuaded as much as Warrenberg, but it really showed how some people thought that Lincoln was a bad leader, not bad leader, but a bad person for pursuing colonization. So after thinking about this, my views on Lincoln, they didn't really change, I guess. I thought after doing the research and stuff, I thought that Lincoln did this for the betterment of the nation and to help out the people. Yes, people may see that it's not right to send off people. That's what I initially thought about this when I first signed up for this topic, that Lincoln's such a good guy. Why would he even think about doing this? But after doing the research, I can really see as in why he would actually consider this. Since it was in the 1800s, it's hard for us to understand why he may have done some of the things that he did, because they're in such a different society and time that we are in now. Like, some little thing is considered fine back then, when now it'd be a really big deal about it, making the news and stuff. So after I thought about that, so the main thing was, I guess I thought about putting myself in the shoes of someone at that time. So that really got me to think, and that if I had an open mind and I was looking for change, I guess, or not afraid of it, it really got me to feel that Lincoln did this to help the nation and the people. So he did it for the better doing rather than just shipping off and getting rid of a race. Because in the research, it never said that he would make everyone leave. It was their choice, and some could leave, some could stay. So I think that wraps up my presentation on Lincoln and colonization, and I hope you guys learned something. Thank you for taking the time to watch this and finish strong with the semester, do good on finals, spend time with family, and yeah, thank you guys.